African Americans have been consistently marginalized in cinema throughout the industry's history. From old Hollywood's use of blackface to the lack of ethnic wins at Hollywood's prestigious award ceremonies, the marginalization of blacks and other minority groups is still prevalent today. John Singleton, known for his trailblazing work in cinema, defied the norms of Hollywood only to prevail as one of the most important African American directors of the industry. Having been born to middle-class parents in Los Angeles in 1968, Singleton found an interest for cinema at an early age. Singleton was able to watch drive-in movies from his mom's apartment building in Inglewood. In a 2016 interview with Vanity Fair, Singleton claims that, quote, "cinema saved me from being a delinquent," end quote. Singleton attended Blair High School and later enrolled at both Pasadena City College and the University of Southern California while studying screenwriting. In 1990, Singleton graduated from USC and immediately signed a contract with Creative Arts Agency due to his notable work during his time at USC. During his senior year at USC, Singleton wrote the screenplay for Boys in the Hood, a coming-of-age drama focused around three black friends living in violence-ridden South Central Los Angeles. Boys in the Hood would ultimately become his professional debut and arguably his most critically acclaimed work. The film would lead to an Oscar nomination for Best Director, the first for an African American and also the youngest to be nominated in that category. Followed after his groundbreaking debut as a screenwriter and director, Singleton excelled in storytelling with the 1993 release of Poetic Justice and the 1995 release of Higher Learning. Subsequent works also include Rosewood, a reenactment of a mob attack against black people in Florida in the early 1920s, Baby Boy, a coming-of-age story, Too Fast, Too Furious, an early entry into the Fast and Furious franchise, and Four Brothers, a crime drama from 2005. Much of Singleton's work as a director, producer, and screenwriter typically reflected the troubled and violent roots of his upbringing. Singleton was not only influenced by his real-life experiences growing up in South Central LA. Anne Hordaway confirms this in the Washington Post, writing that, quote, "just a few months after South Central was set aflame during the Rodney King riots, here was Singleton both critiquing the world he came from and correcting the most reductive and damaging misconceptions about it," end quote. In other words, Singleton didn't feel satisfied with the way American life was being publicly portrayed, and therefore wanted to clearly depict urban life in South Central LA at the time. Part 2. Many of the recurring themes present in Singleton's films include race relations in modern society, the power of family in black culture, the state of policing in urban neighborhoods, and the long-lasting effects of stress-ridden environments on the developing brain. In 1995's Higher Learning, Singleton effectively delivers a narrative with race relations being the center of the story. The film follows three freshmen at Columbia University, Malik Williams, Kristen Connor, and Remy. The film's subject matter dealt with sexuality, rape, and racism. In an SBS Australia interview in 1995, Singleton stated that, quote, "American college campuses are the only place you can see America in its purest form," end quote. The setting for the film allowed Singleton to have his characters, quote, "experience everyday perils, exacerbate differences, and to share his vision of the nation," end quote, from The Guardian. Singleton is best known for depicting the struggle between police and black Americans. Most notably seen in Boys in the Hood, Singleton offers visual interpretations of the reality black youth face every day. Throughout the film, helicopters can be heard patrolling the South Central neighborhoods of Los Angeles. Gunshots and ambulance sirens can also be heard over the dialogue. In the film, Trey and Ricky are stopped by police after leaving a shootout only to be threatened with harassment from both officers. Singleton also depicts the difference in how police treat whites compared to how police treat blacks. Disproportionate handling of blacks can be seen in Higher Learning when Remy tries to escape campus after shooting up a peace festival, which ultimately killed Malik's girlfriend. Remy, a lonely freshman who is radicalized by a Nazi group, tries to escape only to be asked kindly by police officers to put his gun down and everything will be okay. While Malik looks for Remy, he is stopped by police and taken into custody, even though Remy walks past them. I chose John Singleton because of his trailblazing work as a young filmmaker that ultimately resulted in the revitalization of black culture in mainstream media. Higher Learning influenced me the most after familiarizing myself with Singleton's filmography. I couldn't help myself identify with protagonist Malik Williams. I too often found myself really angry and thought the world owed me something. Given my similar upbringing to that of Malik's, I found it almost irresistible to identify with the film. My favorite line from the movie comes after Malik, Fudge, and friends confront Remy and the white supremacists. After beating them in a fight, Malik and Fudge return to campus bruised up. While Malik feels satisfied with winning, the much wiser Fudge knows it's far from over and frustratingly says, quote, "One beatdown will never compare to 439 years of captivity. Never." End quote. Part 3. In 2002, the United States Library of Congress deemed the film Boys in the Hood culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant and selected it for preservation in the National Film Registry. Tambay Obenson wrote a piece on John Singleton's legacy for IndieWire. Obenson writes, quote, "Singleton continued to make movies that focused on the black experience, but none would match the critical, commercial, and cultural impact of Boys in the Hood, a time capsule of Los Angeles 30 years ago and a perfect example of what can be made within the studio system when outsiders are given the opportunity to express themselves." End quote. Part 4. Singleton is praised for accurately portraying life as a young black man in South Central Los Angeles. While violence amongst black neighborhoods was prevalent throughout major cities, Singleton believed it was his duty to break those misconceptions perpetrated by established institutions and the media. Ariel Gray comments on Singleton's legacy by stating that, quote, "As Doughboy points out in the last moments of Boys in the Hood, society at large don't know, don't show, or don't care about what's going on in the hood. But Singleton did just that, managing to capture the prism of blackness." End quote. While there have been reasonable criticisms of his portrayal of black motherhood in his earlier films, it's important to note that while the film helped to, quote, "spotlight the struggle in troubled locales like South Central, its critical and commercial success ultimately did little to change Hollywood studio thinking," end quote. When watching his earlier works like Boys in the Hood and Higher Learning, I couldn't help but apply what I have learned about brain development in areas of poverty. In Boys in the Hood, Trey and his friends fight hard every day with temptation. When exposed to violence, one is more likely to be violent. It is evident towards the end where Trey, covered with Ricky's blood, has to make the tough decision of avenging his best friend or staying home as his father suggested. Luckily, Trey had decent parents to teach him about discipline and his environment. On the contrary, Doughboy did not have a father around and his mother favored Ricky. Subsequently, Doughboy was the most violent character of all. John Singleton passed away in 2019 shortly after stroke at the young age of 51. His contributions to cinema have elevated black culture to the mainstream. The themes John Singleton touched upon are themes still relevant today. John Singleton's entire body of work is an attempt to teach the public about black life in America and the realities of urban neighborhoods. Singleton remains one of the most influential and iconic filmmakers of our generation.